They say the devil can't cross running water, but in the summer of 1873, death walked straight through the heart of Alabama, and nobody saw it coming. 24 men died over 6 months, all of them white, all of them powerful, and all of them members of the most feared organization in the South. The doctors called it cholera, then typhoid, then a mysterious epidemic they couldn't explain. But in the colored quarters of Montgomery County, people knew the truth. Death had a name, a face, and a mission. They called him the Poison Angel, but the world knew him as Jesmond Green. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear was buried for over a century. A story about one man who stood between his people and annihilation, who chose to become a monster so that 75 souls could live. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Let me take you back to Montgomery County, Alabama, in 1873. Reconstruction was collapsing, federal troops were withdrawing, and the white men who'd lost the war were winning the peace through terror. The Ku Klux Klan operated openly, not as criminals but as the unofficial law. They didn't wear masks anymore because they didn't need to. The Montgomery County Klan was run by a council of 24 men: plantation owners, businessmen, the sheriff, 3 county judges, 2 state legislators, doctors, lawyers, and the editor of the Montgomery Daily Ledger. These weren't ignorant night riders, these were educated men with money and power who believed the social order of slavery needed to be restored by any means necessary. Between January and June of 1873, they were responsible for at least 40 murders, hundreds of beatings, dozens of homes burned, and the systematic destruction of any black person who dared to vote, own property, or act like freedom meant something. But this story isn't about them. This story is about the man who stopped them. Jesmond Green was born enslaved on the Whitfield plantation in 1838. The Whitfield family, recognizing intelligence in the boy, had him trained as a cook, working in the big house kitchen from age 8. By 20, Jesmond could prepare a 7-course meal for visiting dignitaries and knew more about food, herbs, and cooking chemistry than most educated chefs. He also knew something else. He knew which plants could heal and which could kill. He knew which mushrooms were safe and which would shut down your organs in 3 days. He knew that arsenic tasted sweet, that strychnine caused convulsions, and that oleander could stop a heart without leaving a trace. When freedom came in 1865, Jesmond opened a small restaurant in Montgomery's colored district. Jesmond's restaurant became an institution, known throughout Alabama for food that rivaled anything in New Orleans. But Jesmond was more than a restaurant owner. He was the unofficial leader of Montgomery's black community. When families needed help escaping Alabama, they came to Jesmond. He'd saved dozens over the years, hiding them in his restaurant cellar, feeding them, and getting them north with forged papers and money. The Klan knew he was helping people escape, but they couldn't prove it. And too many white people liked his cooking to make him a target. That changed in June 1873. The Klan had been planning something they called the Great Purge. They'd compiled a list of 75 black people throughout Montgomery County who they considered problems. Voters, property owners, teachers, preachers, anyone who acted like they deserved equality. The plan was brutal and simple. On July 4th, during Independence Day celebrations, Klan members would simultaneously raid every home on the list. The targets would be dragged from their beds and lynched, their homes burned, their families driven out. 75 murders in one night. But the Klan made one critical mistake. They hired Jesmond to cater their planning meeting. On Saturday, June 14th, Jesmond arrived at Grayson's tobacco warehouse carrying enough food for 30 people. Fried chicken, cornbread, collard greens, sweet potato pie, and his signature peach cobbler. The Klan members were in good spirits, celebrating their upcoming victory, discussing every detail. Jesmond served them with quiet dignity. He smiled politely. He refilled their plates. He listened to every word. and he heard the entire plan. Every name on the list, every address, every detail of timing and coordination. He heard them laugh about how scared the darkies would be. He heard them debate whether to hang the children too, or just burn them alive in their homes. When the meeting ended and Jesmond packed up, he was no longer the same man. He'd spent 8 years saving people, 1 or 2 at a time, hiding them, helping them escape, but 75 people couldn't hide. 75 people couldn't escape in 3 weeks. If he wanted to save them, he'd have to do something else. Something he'd avoided his entire free life. He'd have to kill. That night, Jesmond sat in his restaurant after closing, staring at the list he'd memorized. 75 names. 75 families who had no idea what was coming. He made his decision. He would warn them all, get them to safety if possible. But more importantly, he would make sure the Great Purge never happened. He would eliminate the 24 men who'd planned it before July 4th arrived. Jesmond knew he couldn't use a gun or knife. That would bring immediate retaliation against the entire black community. But poison, slow-acting poison that looked like natural illness, that could work. The Klan members would die over weeks, looking like victims of epidemic disease. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. He started the next day. The Klan held a celebration dinner at the Montgomery Hotel on June 16th. Jesmond catered the event, as he'd done before. This time, the peach cobbler contained small amounts of white snake root, a plant that caused milk sickness. The symptoms appeared days later, weakness and nausea, then progressing to tremors and organ failure. Slow, painful, and in 1873, completely untraceable. 4 men got sick within a week. 3 died within 10 days. The doctors called it an outbreak, possibly contaminated water or spoiled food. No one suspected murder because poison wasn't something black folks were supposed to know about. While the deaths were attributed to natural causes, Jesmond executed the other part of his plan. He sent messengers to every person on the Klan's list, warning them danger was coming. He used his network of church contacts and trusted community members to spread the word. Many families immediately fled north. Others, who couldn't or wouldn't abandon their homes, Jesmond arranged to hide in safe houses throughout the coloured community. But he knew that wouldn't be enough. As long as the Klan Council existed, they'd just make a new list, plan a new purge. The only way to truly save his people was to eliminate the threat entirely. Over the next 3 weeks, Jesmond became death itself. He catered events, delivered meals to sick Klan members as gestures of goodwill, and cooked for private family dinners when requested. Each time, he brought gifts from the poison angel. He used arsenic in the sugar he sold to Judge Harold Whitmore, knowing the judge took his coffee sweet. He used aconite in the blackberry jam he gave to Sheriff Thomas Reynolds. He used ricin, extracted from castor beans, in the tobacco he gifted to State Senator William Bradford. The deaths came slowly, irregularly, never enough at once to suggest a pattern. 1 man died from what looked like heart failure, another from seizures, a third from sudden illness resembling stroke. The doctors were baffled. Montgomery seemed to be experiencing a medical crisis affecting prominent white men, but no one could identify the cause. Jesmond was meticulous. He varied his methods, timing, and delivery systems. He never poisoned more than 3 people with the same substance. He always had an alibi, always had witnesses, and he always expressed appropriate sympathy when another upstanding member of the community tragically passed away. By the end of June, 14 members of the Klan Council were dead. The remaining 10 postponed the Great Purge, claiming they needed time to regroup. But Jesmond knew they'd just reschedule. Men like that didn't give up, they just delayed. So he continued his work. 3 more deaths came in early July. Dr. Charles Pemberton died of apparent kidney failure. 2 brothers who owned the largest plantation in the county ate dinner together and consumed mushrooms Jesmond had carefully selected. Death-cap mushrooms that destroyed the liver slowly and irreversibly. By July 4th, only 9 members remained alive. The Great Purge was cancelled. The survivors were too frightened, too confused, and too sick to organise anything. Several were bedridden. Others had fled Montgomery entirely. The Independence Day celebration was subdued that year. Instead of fireworks and parties, there were funerals and fear. The white community was in shock. Some blamed God's judgment. Others blamed contaminated water. A few whispered about northern agents or federal assassination plots. No one suspected that the quiet black man who ran the restaurant on 3rd Street had just committed the most successful act of resistance in Alabama history. But Jesmond wasn't finished. 9 members still lived, and as long as they drew breath, the threat remained. Over the next 2 months, he continued his methodical work. One man died from what looked like cholera, another from blood poisoning after a small cut became infected. A third simply stopped waking up one morning. By September 1873, only 5 members of the original Klan Council remained. These 5 were smarter, more cautious. They'd stopped eating in public, stopped accepting food from anyone they didn't know, and stopped attending gatherings where Jesmond might be present. But they hadn't stopped meeting. They still gathered in secret locations to plot their recovery and plan revenge against whoever was responsible. They suspected federal agents, Republican operatives, maybe even a traitor among their own. They never suspected Jesmond Green. That was their fatal mistake. One of the 5, Alderman Robert Crawford, had a daughter getting married in October. Despite his caution, he couldn't refuse when she specifically requested that Jesmond Green cater the reception. His cooking was legendary, and she dreamed of having him cook for her special day since childhood. Crawford reluctantly agreed, but with strict conditions. Jesmond would prepare food in front of witnesses. Every dish would be tasted by someone else before the family ate. Crawford's personal doctor would be present throughout. Jesmond agreed to all conditions. He arrived at the Crawford estate and spent the day preparing a feast while being watched. He tasted every dish himself. He allowed the doctor to inspect his ingredients. He submitted to every humiliation and precaution they could devise. The wedding reception was beautiful. The food was perfect. Robert Crawford, satisfied that he'd taken every possible precaution, relaxed for the first time in months and enjoyed his daughter's wedding. He died 3 days later from what appeared to be a heart attack. The doctor found nothing suspicious. Crawford was 62, overweight and under tremendous stress. Heart attacks happened. What the doctor didn't know was that Jesmond hadn't poisoned the food. He'd poisoned the tobacco in the cigars given as gifts to male guests. The poison was absorbed through the mouth and lungs slowly, taking days to build up to lethal levels. By the time Crawford died, no one connected it to the wedding. The remaining 4 members broke. 3 sold everything and left Alabama, moving to Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The 4th elderly plantation owner, Harrison Grayson, simply stopped leaving his house. He died 6 months later. Some said of fear, others said of the same mysterious illness that had claimed so many. 24 men. All dead within 8 months, and 75 black families saved from the torture and murder that had been planned for them. The Montgomery Daily Ledger called 1873 the Year of Plague, attributing the deaths to a mysterious epidemic that medical science couldn't explain. Federal authorities investigated briefly, but found no evidence of foul play. And Jesmond Green? He continued running his restaurant for another 20 years, cooking meals, serving his community, and helping people escape when needed. He never spoke of what he'd done. He never confessed, never boasted, never sought recognition. But in the coloured churches, in quiet conversations between people who'd been on that list, in stories passed down through families who survived, the truth was known. Jesmond Green had saved 75 people by becoming their angel of death. He'd used knowledge gained in slavery, skills learned in a master's kitchen, to deliver justice when the law wouldn't, and salvation when hope seemed lost. He died peacefully in 1894, at age 56, surrounded by friends and community members who knew exactly what he'd done and loved him for it. His funeral was the largest Montgomery's coloured community had ever seen. Hundreds attended, including dozens who owed him their lives. The white newspapers noted the passing of a talented coloured chef and nothing more. They never knew that the man who'd served them so faithfully had also been their judgment and their end. 24 men died, 75 families lived, and somewhere in the space between those numbers lies the truth about what it took to survive in the South after slavery, when freedom was promised, but terror was delivered. What do you think? Could one man really have done this? Could someone have saved so many lives by taking others? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, smash that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. These stories matter. These heroes deserve to be remembered. The poison angel walked among us once. His name was Jesmond Green, and he saved 75 souls by serving death to those who deserved it most.